You are lying in bed. It is 11:43 at night. You have to be up at 6. You know this. Your body knows this. The alarm is set. Pillows are perfect. And your phone is in your hand. You open it to check one thing. Maybe the weather, maybe a text. And then a video autoplays. It is someone making a sandwich. Not even a good sandwich. It is a man in a badly lit kitchen assembling what appears to be a crime against bread. You do not care about the sandwich. You do not know this man. You have never searched for sandwich content in your life. And yet, you cannot look away. The next video loads. A cat falling off a table, then a woman explaining why you have been folding your shirts wrong for 30 years, then someone pressure washing a driveway, then a news clip, then another sandwich. Different man, same crimes against bread. And now it is 12:27 and you are 44 minutes deep into content you did not ask for, do not remember, and will never think about again. So here's the question that should be keeping neuroscientists up at night. It probably is, because they're also watching sandwich videos at midnight. Why can you not stop? You are an intelligent, autonomous adult with a functioning prefrontal cortex and a clear understanding that sleep is important. And yet a screen full of content you did not choose, do not want, and will not remember has hijacked your evening, like a carjacker with a Netflix account. This is not a willpower problem. This is not a discipline problem. This is not because you are lazy, weak, or addicted to technology in some moral sense. This is a 60,000-year-old predator detection system firing once per second in an environment it was never designed for. Welcome to Mismatch Monday. You are listening to Mismatch Monday from the Wired Ape, the show where we take one modern problem that nearly everyone experiences, reverse engineer it through evolutionary biology, and answer the question, why does your brain do something that seems irrational, self-destructive, or just plain confusing? I am Sarah, and the answer, almost every time, is the same. Your brain is not broken. Your brain is ancient. You are running Stone Age biological software in a world of high-definition screens, infinite scrolls, and algorithmic content feeds. And the mismatch between what your brain was built for and what it is being asked to deal with is the source of an extraordinary amount of modern suffering. Suffering we blame on ourselves when we should be blaming it on the environment. Today's mismatch, the orienting response, the single most exploited survival reflex in the history of the human species. It is the reason you cannot stop watching screens. It is the reason television was engineered the way it was. And it is the reason toddlers who watch fast-cut TV may develop measurable attention difficulties by age 7. By the end of this episode, you will understand exactly what the orienting response is, why evolution built it, how screens hijack it, and what ancient cultures did instead. Cultures that had no word for doom scrolling, but had very sophisticated technology for resetting the exact same neural circuits. And on Friday, on Ritual Friday, we will walk you through one of those ancient technologies, monastic style silence practice and natural soundscape immersion, with step-by-step instructions you can try this weekend. Let us get into it. Let us start with some numbers, because the scale of this thing is truly staggering. The average American adult spends somewhere between 7 and 8 hours per day looking at screens. Not for work. That is the total screen time, including leisure. Teenagers are in a similar range, often higher. The average person checks their phone around 96 times per day. That is once every 10 minutes during waking hours. But the raw time is not the story. The story is what is happening inside your skull during those hours. In 1986, Baron Reeves at Stanford University and Esther Thorson at the University of Missouri published research that would quietly reshape our understanding of how screens capture attention. They studied something called the orienting response, a phenomenon first described by the Russian physiologist Ivan Shekhinov in his 1863 book Reflexes of the Brain, and later named by Ivan Pavlov, who called it the stoika. They studied something called the orienting response, a phenomenon first discovered by the Russian physiologist Ivan Shekhinov in his 1863 book Reflexes of the Brain, and later named by Ivan Pavlov, who called it the stoika reflex. Literally, what is reflex in Russian? The orienting response is your brain's automatic, involuntary reaction to any sudden or novel change in your environment. A flash of light, a sharp sound, movement in your peripheral vision, a shift in pitch or color or spatial arrangement. Before you have a chance to think, before your conscious mind even knows what happened, your body has already responded. Your pupil dilates. Before you have a chance to think, before your conscious mind even knows what happened, your body has already responded. Your pupils dilate. Your heart rate briefly decelerates. That is your parasympathetic nervous system hitting the brakes so your body can gather more information. Blood vessels in your head dilate to increase your blood. Before you have a chance to think, before your conscious mind even knows what happened, your body has already responded. Your pupils dilate. Your heart rate briefly decelerates. That is your parasympathetic nervous system hitting the brakes so your body can gather more information. Blood vessels in your head dilate to increase brain blood flow. Your galvanic skin response spikes, and your alpha brainwaves, the rhythmic electrical patterns associated with the calm, resting brain, get blocked for several seconds. Your entire body enters a state called alert mobility. Alert immobility. You freeze, you scan, you orient toward the source of the change. This is not something you decide to do. It is something that happens to you. Now here's what Reeves, Thorson, and later Annie Lang at Indiana University demonstrated. The formal features of television, the cuts, edits, zooms, pans, sudden music changes, camera angle shifts, trigger the orienting response. Not because you find them interesting, not because the concept is compelling, but because your brain interprets each cut, each edit, each visual change as a novel stimulus that must be evaluated for potential threat. And in modern screen content, advertisements, music videos, action sequences, short-form social media, these formal features occur at a rate of approximately 1 per second. 1 per second. Your ancient threat detection system fires. 4 to 6 later, your heart rate would normally return to baseline as your brain decides, not a threat, stand down. But before that recovery can complete, another cut, another edit, another novel stimulus. Your orienting response fires again, and again, and again, 1 per second, without recovery, for as long as you are watching. This is what researchers describe as continuous orienting response. Your brain never returns to baseline. It is locked in a permanent state of, what is it? A loop that was designed to fire maybe a few times in an hour in a forest, and is now firing 60 times a minute on a screen. And here's the thing that makes this a public health story, not just an interesting neuroscience footnote. In 2004, Dmitry Christakis and colleagues at the University of Washington published a study in Pediatrics, the Journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics, looking at more than 2,600 toddlers. They found that early television exposure between ages 1 and 3 was associated with attention problems at age 7. The headline finding: for every additional hour of television watched per day at those early ages, the probability of developing attentional difficulties increased by approximately 10%. The study controlled for cognitive stimulation and emotional support in the home environment. That statistic landed like a grenade in the parenting world, and it raised a question that, 2 decades later, has only become more urgent. If screens are doing something measurable to developing brains, what exactly is that something? The answer increasingly points back to the orienting response. Christakis himself argued that the unnatural pace of stimulation in screen media, the speed, the rapid cutting, the constant novelty, conditions the developing brain to expect a level of sensory input that the real world simply cannot provide. A classroom cannot compete with a screen that fires your orienting response 60 times a minute. A teacher cannot compete with an algorithm optimized to never let your "what is it" reflex rest. And this is not just a children's issue. Adults report the same subjective experience. Researchers have documented it in studies and in plain language. If a television is on, I just can't keep my eyes off it. I don't want to watch as much as I do, but I can't help it. I feel hypnotized when I watch television. Hypnotized is actually closer to the neurological truth than most people realize. The continuous triggering of the orienting response produces a state that feels, subjectively, like passive absorption, kind of glazed attention that requires no effort but also generates no satisfaction. You are watching, but you are not processing. You are attending, but you are not learning. You are awake, but you are not quite alert in any meaningful sense. And the screen, your phone, your laptop, your TikTok feed, is engineered, right down to the millisecond timing of its cuts, keep you in exactly that state for as long as possible, because that state is where the advertising revenue lies. Because that state is where the advertising revenue lives. That state is where the engagement metrics live. That state is where your eyeballs become someone else's product. Your attention is not being captured. Your attention is being framed. Your attention is being farmed. All right, let us go back. Way, way back. 200,000 years, maybe further. You are a member of a small band of Homo sapiens on the East African savanna. You have no walls. You have no weapons that work at a distance. No rifles. No bows yet. Just sharpened sticks and stones that require you to be dangerously close to anything you are trying to kill or avoid being killed by. Your sensory environment is vast, open, and full of things that want to eat you. In this world, the single most important thing your brain can do is detect change. Not pattern, not beauty, not meaning, change. A rustle in the tall grass that was not there a second ago. A shadow that has shifted position. A sudden silence where there was birdsong. A branch that snaps when no wind was blowing. Any change in your sensory fields could mean predator. And in a world where predators include lions, hyenas, leopards, venomous snakes, and rival human bands, the cost of missing a change is death. Not injury, not inconvenience, death. Genes removed from the pool, lineage over, game finished. So evolution has built you the orienting response, and it builds it fast, ruthless, and mandatory. The neural architecture runs through some of the oldest structures in your brain. The superior colliculus. The superior colliculus, a paired structure sitting on top of your brainstem, part of the midbrain, is a primary processing center for the detection of sudden visual motion. This structure predates the evolution of the neocortex by hundreds of millions of years. It is so old that it processes visual movement before the information even reaches your conscious visual cortex. You see the movement, and your brain begins responding before you are aware you have seen anything. This is why you can feel someone walking up behind you. Your peripheral visual system, routed through the superior colliculus, catches motion that your conscious mind has not yet registered. The orienting response is already firing. Your head is already turning. From the colliculus, the signal propagates through a cascade of structures. The hippocampus, your brain's novelty detector and memory encoder, activates. The anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, a region critical for conflict monitoring and action control, lights up. The amygdala, the brain's threat evaluation center, comes online, assessing whether the novel stimulus is dangerous. The parasympathetic nervous system triggers a brief deceleration in heart rate, which, counterintuitively, is not relaxation. It is your body slowing down to gather maximum sensory information. This is the freeze in the freeze, fight, flight sequence. And here's the key feature. All of this is involuntary. You do not choose to orient. You cannot choose not to orient. The orienting response is pre-conscious, pre-voluntary, and automatic. It fires whether you want it to or not, whether the stimulus is relevant or not, whether you are a toddler or a tenured professor. This was an extraordinary survival advantage. On the savanna, the organisms that oriented fastest to novel stimuli were the organisms that survived to reproduce. The ones who ignored the rustle in the grass because they were too busy or trying to focus became lunch. Now, a critical feature of this system is habituation. After the orienting response fires and your brain determines that the stimulus is not a threat, just a leaf blowing, just a bird moving, the response attenuates. It weakens. Your body returns to baseline. After 10 to 30 exposures to the same non-threatening stimulus, the orienting response stops firing altogether. Your brain has learned, this is not relevant. I can ignore this. Habituation is the off switch. It is what allows you to sit in a forest for hours and eventually stop flinching at every rustling leaf. It is what allows you to live near a train track and eventually sleep through the sound of passing trains. It is your nervous system saying, I've evaluated this. It's fine. I'm standing down. And habituation is precisely what screens are engineered to prevent. Every cut is a new stimulus. Every edit resets the clock. Every zoom, pan, camera angle change, notification ping, and auto-playing video ensures that your orienting response never reaches habituation. The off switch never engages. Your what is it reflex never says, it's fine, and goes back to sleep. 1 per second. No habituation, no rest. Your Stone Age predator detection circuit is being triggered at a frequency it was never designed to sustain by stimuli that contain zero actual threat information in a body that has no evolutionary precedent for this level of continuous sensory novelty. That is the mismatch. Let us go one layer deeper. What is happening chemically during the orienting response? When a novel stimulus triggers orientation, your brain releases a cocktail of neurochemicals. Norepinephrine, also called noradrenaline, surges from the locus coeruleus, a cluster of neurons in the brainstem that serves as the brain's alertness switch. Norepinephrine sharpens sensory processing, narrows attention, and increases arousal. It is the chemical that makes you feel hyper-alert during the freeze phase of the orienting response. Simultaneously, dopamine, the neurotransmitter most people associate with reward, but that actually functions more like a prediction and salience signal, spikes in response to novel, unexpected stimuli. Dopamine does not say, "This feels good." Dopamine says, "This is worth paying attention to." And every novel stimulus on a screen, every cut, every edit, every new face, every unexpected sound triggers that dopamine salience signal. Meanwhile, cortisol, the primary stress hormone produced by the adrenal glands, begins accumulating. In small acute doses, cortisol is useful. It mobilizes energy, sharpens focus, and prepares the body for action. But cortisol is designed for short bursts followed by recovery. Under continuous orienting response, the kind that screen media induces, cortisol does not return to baseline. It accumulates, and chronic cortisol elevation is associated with a catalog of problems: disrupted sleep, impaired memory consolidation, increased inflammation, suppressed immune function, weight gain, anxiety, and reduced prefrontal cortex function, meaning the very brain region responsible for self-control and long-term planning gets weakened by the exact neurochemical that screens are chronically producing. So let us inventory what a typical evening of scrolling actually does to your neurochemistry. Norepinephrine keeps you hyper-alert. Dopamine tells your brain that every new stimulus is salient and worth attending. Cortisol accumulates because the threat monitoring system never stands down. And your prefrontal cortex, the one part of the brain that could say, "Put down the phone and go to sleep," is progressively impaired by the cortisol that the phone itself is generating. Basically, the snake is eating its own tail. So, when exactly did this go wrong? When did a survival reflex become a liability? The short answer, in approximately 1928. That is when the first commercial television sets entered home. But the orienting response was not weaponized by accident. It was weaponized by design, through a decades-long process of empirical refinement in the broadcast and advertising industries. Early television was slow, single-camera setups, long takes, minimal editing. Watch any television from the 90s and you will notice the camera barely moves. Scenes last minutes, not seconds. The pacing is conversational. By modern standards, it is almost unbearable. But advertisers notice something. When you cut from one shot to another, even within the same scene, viewers' attention snaps back to the screen. Their bodies stiffen slightly, their eyes locked, and they remembered the product better. Without knowing the neuroscience, the industry had discovered the orienting response and begun optimizing for it. Through the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, the pace of editing accelerated, not because storytelling demanded it, but because attention metrics rewarded it. The average shot length in Hollywood films decreased from approximately 12 seconds in the 1930s to around 4 seconds by the 2000s. In music videos and advertisements, it dropped below 2 seconds. In modern short-form content, TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, the pace can hit 1 edit per second or faster. Here is the devastating insight from Annie Lang's research at Indiana University. Increasing the frequency of edits improves attention and memory for the content, but only up to a point. Beyond approximately 10 formal features per second, the orienting response becomes overloaded. Viewers still attend to the screen. They literally cannot stop watching. But cognitive processing collapses. They stop encoding meaningful information. They feel simultaneously wired and exhausted. Attention without comprehension. Eyes open, brain offline. This is not a side effect. This is the product. Because the advertising model does not require you to understand anything. It requires you to keep watching. Your continuous orienting response, sustained at a rate your ancestors never experienced, is the raw material of the attention economy. It is the commodity being sold, and the engineering of screen content, from the length of TikTok videos to the placement of next episode autoplay buttons, is designed with exquisite precision to keep your orienting response firing and your habituation from ever kicking in. Scale of the mismatch. Let me give you a framework for understanding how enormous this gap is. In an ancestral environment, a savanna, a forest, a coastal camp, the number of novel visual stimuli that would trigger a full orienting response in a typical hour might be in the range of a few to perhaps a dozen. A bird taking flight, a change in wind direction, bending the grass, a cloud shadow crossing the landscape. Each one triggers orientation. Each one is followed by evaluation, habituation, and return to baseline. In 1 hour of modern short-form video content, the number of orienting response triggers can exceed 3,000. 3,000, what is it? Signals in 60 minutes. Compared to perhaps 12 in the environment your brain was calibrated for. That is a 250-fold increase in the frequency of a reflex that was designed to fire sparingly and recover fully between activations. Who exploits this and how? This is not an accident of technology. It is the business model. Social media platforms employ teams of engineers and behavioral psychologists whose explicit job it is to maximize time on platform. The variable reward schedules built into infinite scroll feeds, you never know when the next interesting post will appear, so you keep scrolling, are structurally identical to the reward schedules used in slot machines. The autoplay feature on YouTube and Netflix is designed to prevent the natural decision point where habituation might occur, the moment where you might say, "That's enough," and put the device down. The notification system on your phone, the ping, the badge, the vibration, is a deliberately engineered novel stimulus designed to trigger your orienting response and pull you back to the screen. Every element is optimized to exploit the same 60,000-year-old circuit. The same "what is it" reflex that kept your ancestors alive is now being used to keep your eyeballs on a screen so that someone can sell your attention to an advertiser. Cross-cultural data. And here's where the mismatch becomes visible across cultures. In society with lower screen penetration, rural communities, indigenous populations, and traditional communities with stronger oral and communal entertainment traditions, attention problems associated with screen exposure are either absent or significantly reduced. This is not because those populations have better genes or stronger willpower. It is because their sensory environments do not trigger 3,000 orienting responses per hour. The pathology is in the environment, not the person. So, what did ancient humans do? How did they manage the orienting response without it becoming a liability? Two things primarily. First, they lived in sensory environments calibrated to their neural architecture. And second, they developed cultural technologies, practices, rituals, disciplines that actively restored and recalibrated the attentional system. Ancestral soundscapes, the original sensory environments. Let us start with sounds, because the orienting response is not just visual, it is powerfully auditory. Your ancestors lived in what we might call the ancestral soundscape. This was an acoustic environment composed of birdsong, wind, moving water, animal calls, rustling vegetation, fire crackling, and human voices in conversational proximity. These sounds share a set of characteristics. They are complex but patterned, varying but predictable within a range, and, crucially, they change slowly enough to allow habituation. Birdsong is a particularly interesting case. Evolutionary psychologists have proposed that the presence of birdsong served as an ambient safety feature. If birds are singing, predators are not nearby. If the forest goes silent, if the birds stop, that silence itself becomes an orienting stimulus, a signal of potential danger. Your brain is calibrated to hear birdsong as all clear and silence as heads up. Modern research supports this in striking detail. Studies from the Max Planck Institute for Human Development have found that listening to birdsong for just 15 minutes reduces reported anxiety and stress, with measurable decreases in heart rate and cortisol levels. A 2026 study from the University of Tübingen found that walking in nature while paying attention to birdsong produced a 33% drop in cortisol and improvements in well-being, and that the attention-focusing element was that key differentiator, not just passive exposure. Water sounds show similar effects. A study by Michels and Hammers at Gaunt University found that both bird and water sounds produced better cortisol recovery after acute stress compared to wind-only conditions. And here's the critical insight from attention restoration theory, ART, developed by Stephen Kaplan at the University of Michigan. Natural environments produce what Kaplan called soft fascination, stimuli that gently engage your attention without demanding it. Birdsong holds your awareness, but does not hijack it. Water sounds draw your ear, but do not assault it. The orienting response fires occasionally, a bird call here, a splash there, but at a frequency that allows full recovery between activations. Natural soundscapes are the habitat the orienting response was designed for. Screens are the habitat that breaks it. Monastic silence, the cultural technology of attentional reset. Now, here's where it gets fascinating, because humans did not just passively live in natural soundscapes. Some cultures, many cultures, deliberately engineered environments of reduced sensory input as a technology for attentional and spiritual restoration. The most extreme and sustained example in Western tradition is the Carthusian order, founded in 1084 by Saint Bruno of Cologne in the valley of Chartreuse near Grenoble, France. Carthusian monks live in individual cells arranged around a great cloister. They gather in the church for only a few offices: night vigils, morning mass, afternoon vespers. They eat together only on Sundays and great feast days. They have no radio, no television, no screens of any kind. The prior receives outside news and relays only what the community needs to know. They do not, contrary to popular belief, take a literal vow of silence. But their daily structure creates long, unbroken intervals of silence that are measured not in minutes, but in hours and days. Speech is reserved for communal worship, weekly chapter meetings, and the weekly walk. They are one extended period of conversation. The Carthusians have maintained this practice, essentially unchanged, for nearly 1,000 years. Their motto, Stat crudum volvitar orbis. The cross stand while the wind turns. The world changes, the silence does not. This is not the only tradition. Quaker meeting worship, the religious society of friends, is centered on communal silence. A Quaker meeting begins in silence and remains in silence, unless someone feels moved by the Spirit to speak. There is no liturgy, no sermon, no leader. The silence is the practice. The collective stillness is the technology. In Buddhism, noble silence, Ariya Mona in Pali, is a structured practice during intensive meditation retreats, particularly in the Theravada Vipassana tradition. Participants maintain silence, no speaking, no eye contact, no reading, no writing beyond essential notes, for periods ranging from 10 days to months. The purpose is explicitly stated: to remove the sensory stimulation that agitates the mind and to allow the practitioner to observe the mind's own activity without external interference. In Hinduism, Mauna, the vow of silence, is practiced by sages, aesthetics, and householders alike as a discipline for purifying speech and attention. The Sanskrit word muni, meaning sage, literally translates as the silent one. What all of these traditions share is a common insight: that the human attentional system requires periodic withdrawal from sensory stimulation in order to function properly. They did not call it resetting the orienting response. They called it prayer, contemplation, purification, mindfulness, or stillness. But the functional outcome is the same: removing the stream of novel stimuli that keeps the threat detection system chronically activated and allowing the nervous system to return to its normal baseline. These are not quaint relics of pre-modern thinking. These are empirically validated technologies for restoring a neurological system that modern life systematically overloads. So here's the reframe. If you can't stop watching screens, if your eyes drift to any television that is on in the room, if you lose hours to TikTok without understanding how, if you pick up your phone and cannot remember why, you are not lazy. You are not weak. You are not addicted in the way we usually use that word. You are an animal. Specifically, you are a primate whose threat detection system evolved in an environment where novel visual and auditory stimuli occurred a few times per hour and were potentially life-threatening. That system is now being activated thousands of times per hour by stimuli that are commercially designed to exploit its involuntary nature. The mismatch is not between you and your willpower. The mismatch is between your nervous system and your environment. And the solution, the real solution, is not to try harder to put the phone down. It is to understand that your brain needs what it evolved with: periods of low stimulation sensory input, natural soundscapes, and structured silence that allows your orienting response to habituate, your cortisol to clear, and your prefrontal cortex to come back online. This is what monastic silence does. This is what a walk in a forest with Birdsong does. This is what a Quaker meeting does. This is what a 10-day Vipassana retreat does. This is what sitting by a river does. These practices are not spiritual luxuries. They are neurological maintenance. And on Friday, on Ritual Friday, we are going to walk you through what I am calling the digital sunset and soundscape reset, a combined practice drawing on monastic silence traditions and natural soundscape research that you can do this weekend in 30 minutes. We will give you the science, the steps, the timing, the common mistakes, and the realistic expectations for what it feels like when you deliberately give your orienting response a break. Because your brain was built for birdsong and firelight and long stretches of nothing. And it is starving for them. Data drop. Fast, shareable. Here we go. The orienting response, first described by Ivan Shchenikov in 1863, named by Ivan Pavlov, studied systematically by Evgeny Sokolov in the 90s. It has been the subject of research for over 160 years. Modern screen content triggers the orienting response at a rate of approximately 1 per second. Advertisements, music videos, and action sequences routinely hit this rate. The average shot length in Hollywood films dropped from approximately 12 seconds in the 1930s to around 4 seconds in the 2000s. In short-form social media content, it can be under 1 second. Over 2,600 toddlers. 10% increase in attention problems at age 7 per hour of daily television at ages 1 to 3. Important caveat: a 2021 multiverse analysis of the same dataset found only about 20% of alternative statistical models produced significant results, indicating the relationship is likely more nuanced than the original headline suggested. The concern about screen pace and developing attention remains active in the research community. Annie Lang's research: beyond approximately 10 formal features per second, the orienting response is overloaded. Viewers still attend, but cognitive processing collapses. Attention without comprehension. Cortisol drops of approximately 33% from a 30-minute walk in nature with attentive birdsong listening. University of Tübingen, 2026. Max Planck Institute. 15 minutes of birdsong listening reduces anxiety, stress, heart rate, and cortisol in measurable amounts. Attention restoration theory. Stephen Kaplan, University of Michigan. Natural environments produce soft fascination, stimuli that engage attention without exhausting it. The antidote to continuous orienting response. The Carthusian order has maintained a practice of structured silence for 942 years. Without interruption, without modification for smartphones. And the final number: your phone contains more orienting response triggers per minute than your ancestors encountered in an entire day. You are not undisciplined. You are under siege. Let me bring it back to where we started. You are lying in bed. Your phone is in your hand. A man is making a terrible sandwich, and you cannot look away. Now you know why. 50,000-year-old predator detection circuit. The orienting response is being triggered once per second by a device designed to prevent that response from ever habituating. Your norepinephrine is spiking. Your dopamine is telling your brain that every new stimulus is salient. Your cortisol is rising. And your prefrontal cortex, the part of you that planned to be asleep by 11, is being chemically impaired by the very act of watching. This is not a character flaw. This is a mismatch. And mismatches have solutions, not perfect solutions, not delete all your apps and move to the woods solutions, but solutions grounded in an understanding of what your nervous system actually needs. On Wednesday, on the Scholar's Fire, We will be exploring the neuroscience of attention in depth, how the brain allocates, sustains, and restores attentional resources, and what the latest research tells us about the architecture of focus in a distraction-saturated world. And on Friday, on Ritual Friday, we will give you the practice, a structured silence and natural soundscape immersion protocol you can try this weekend, with the science of why it works and the steps to do it well. If this episode made you think, or made you put your phone down for a minute, subscribe to the Wired Ape wherever you listen. Follow us at the Wired Ape on Instagram, X, and all the platforms that are, yes, exploiting your orienting response even as you follow us on them. The irony is not lost. Visit thewiredape.com for show notes, citations, the Sentinel article companion piece, and all episode resources. Check out Cyvester at cyvester.com for the behavioral finance angle on how your wired ape brain interacts with money and risk. And explore the Management Messiah on LinkedIn for how these evolutionary insights play out in the workplace. Join the Watering Hole, our community, and tell us, when was the last time you spent 30 minutes in complete silence? No screen, no podcast, no music, just you and whatever soundscape was around you. We want to hear about it. Your brain is not broken. It is ancient, and it was built for a world with more birdsong and fewer sandwich videos. This has been Mismatch Monday. I am Sarah, and we will see you Wednesday.